Hello, Golden Girls, and welcome to this episode of Golden Girls Podcast. I am so excited to be joined today by one of my favorite people, both in the business world and in my personal life, my dear friend, Jenna Herbut. Thank you so much for being here, Jenna.
It is such a pleasure. I think a year and a half in the making, but we're doing it.
At least, the card we pulled right before we hit play was doubt is part of the creative process. And I'm like, I also feel like, a year and a half of waiting is in there and a year and a half of like percolating on all the ideas. So I'm so grateful that we are actually here making this happen. And I know it's going to be incredible for everybody listening. Now, I am so lucky that I know you on a personal level and get to spend time with you. But for those people who don't know you, you wear a lot of hats, you've done a lot of amazing things in your life, and you're an incredibly successful entrepreneur and human. So for those that don't know you, why don't you kind of lift back the curtain and share a little bit about the journey that you've been on in terms of entrepreneurship, life, all the things.
I appreciate that intro. I guess I have done a lot. It's so funny because when I think about there's so much I want to do. So I always feel like, but I feel like I'm just getting started. But I did start entrepreneurship at a very young age. I think it was an influence of my dad. He was an entrepreneur growing up. And so the first company I started was called Booty Belts. And it was a product I created for one of my university classes. I was studying business at the U of A, and for one of my marketing classes, I came up with this business plan and then eventually launched Booty Belts. And if you Google them, you probably won't find much because this is back like 20 years ago before, we posted all the things that we do on the internet. They're just these scarf belts that I started to produce and then ended up selling them in stores. And it didn't take long before I thought, okay, well, what if I start selling these myself instead of selling them to the store that would end up selling them to the customer? So I ended up doing festivals and craft fairs all across the country. And back at that point in time, there wasn't the abundance of craft fairs like there is now. So it didn't take me long to think, what would it be like to start my own event? And my brother and I founded Make It Together. We both, just had this idea. And so we made the craft fairs cool and hip. So we had a bar and some music, and it just really caught on because that was just what was happening at that moment in time. There was a lot more creative people. Craft fairs were making a resurgence. Etsy was quite new on the scene. And we were really fortunate to have some early success, and then it just built. So this year, 2023, is Make It's 15-year anniversary. So it's quite wild that I have a 15-year-old business. So that's the fast story of how it started, and just a lot of community support. And we really made, we call them Makeys, the exhibitors that Make It. We really created a community, or I would say we all created a community, because I don't think one person builds community. I feel like community is a collective experience that takes the buy-in of everyone that's part of it, that they decide that they're going to be part of it. So I'm really proud of what Make It has evolved into.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things I already am like, which direction should we go? And this is why we're friends. I think anybody listening, and if anybody who knows you or gets to read your bio, all your accomplishments, I think when you said there was going to resonate with so many people, which is like, I am so busy sometimes looking at all the things I want to still do versus the things that I've done. Mm-hmm. And I think there's such a healthy balance there. And I hope that you can look in the mirror and know that you are freaking awesome. And I also just love that you have. Good. I love that you have this pizzazz and like this natural bubbling and energy and excitement and really curiosity and interest in creating more. And I think that's something that I always love about you. And what you said there too around like make it this being this unique time, that's something I think is really one of your gifts, is being able to pick up on some level, on many levels, like what's going on in the collective consciousness and in the world around us, and what are the needs that people have that you can serve. And I think that's really one of your gifts. I mean, and anyone who's a successful entrepreneur has had to do that at some point, and you do that so well. And let's also put in a big shameless plug for Make It. I have to tell you, I knew it was going to be cool. Someone told me it was Etsy in person. And I was like, well, I'm not really like on Etsy much, but that's cool. And I went to your show in December and okay, I hate shopping. I'm just like not, I just really struggle with gift giving. My love language is a 0. And I mean, you saw me. I had to get a wagon to pull all my stuff out. I'm pretty sure Troy is hoping that I somehow miss the event this year. But I got, but like someone needs to carry the wagon, babe. This is good. This is gonna be your job. But you know, it was such an amazing community. I really felt that, you know, people were proud to be there, excited to be there, proud of their products. It was fun. It was great music. And there really is something super special about it. And you've certainly, for the people like me who are like, don't know how to buy gifts, but are looking for unique things to give people that they love in their life, it is such a fantastic event. So I'm not technically like is there a name for the people who are just like make it groupies? Like,
Yeah,
because I'm not a makey, but I feel like I need a name.
yeah, I know. We should get a name. Yeah.
Okay, we'll try ChatGPT on that.
Sounds good.
ChatGPT, come up with 10 creative names for a make it groupie. We'll see what it comes up with. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's talk about the last couple years because so you have Make It. You also own Conscious Lab, which we're going to talk about in a future episode. It's an event space. Make It is an event. The last couple years have obviously just rocked your world. So tell us a little bit about that. You know, what happened? How did you pivot? What did you simplify? What did you learn?
Yeah, I never really saw that one coming. Yeah, it was
That wasn't in like your business plan, hey?
not really, but it worked out really nicely in the end. Yeah, so we were gearing up for our spring shows back in 2020, and yeah, it was a tough one to navigate, just morally the right thing to do. So I was actually very grateful that the government stepped in and basically shut us down, so I didn't have to make that call because that's a tough call to make. But yeah, it was 1 week before our Edmonton show, so all our billboards were up, all our advertising, everything was ready to rock. And a week before, we had to pull the plug, and it was tough. And it was a collective experience. It wasn't just a bad thing that happened to me or the company personally. It was all over. So it was really a time where I felt like we came together as a community. And I remember I did a GoFundMe thing, and we had some of the Makeys create products for the first responders and people in healthcare, like masks and all hand sanitizer, all this stuff. So we actually raised quite a bit of money, which was super cool. I also, as we mentioned, I was pregnant during that time. So I really got to experience that pregnancy without having the weight of organizing Make It. You know, in hindsight, one thing I wish I would have done, I would have just canceled the year. Instead of, we thought we were going to do holiday, so we accepted all the applications. We actually sold out the show, and then we had to do another round of refunds. And some of the other events were not doing refunds. They were just holding the money until, you know, things opened up. But it was really important for me, just energetically, to have that be clear and just, you know, we'll take your money again once we know we can have a show. So we refunded everybody, which was definitely a little bit painful, and something, again, I hadn't experienced before. But I feel like just overall, like, everyone was very generous. Like, some of the companies that we dealt with, were really great. And like the venues said, you know what, don't worry about it. Like we'll refund your money, or we'll take it for the next show. So I felt like it was a really amazing way to see the good side of humanity really shine. And it, yeah, definitely created a long pause that I feel I needed, because before COVID, we were producing 7 shows a year. We had 2 in Edmonton, 2 in Calgary, and then 3 in Vancouver. And I feel like, in hindsight, I almost didn't know how to get off the ride. Like, the ride was going so fast. And my business model really bakes accountability right in there, in the sense of, you know, we have 250 exhibitors for Vancouver, so we take the money from the artists and the makers, and then we sure as hell have to put on a good show, because we want to make sure, you know, they're happy and the shoppers are happy. So it probably probably some of my people pleasing nature also. I feel like we choose the business, or the business chooses us in the area of life where we have to grow the most. And that's why I've always looked at it as a spiritual journey more than anything.
Couldn't agree more. And thanks for sharing such like the beautiful stories of humanity, because I think we've lost some of that in the last like 2 and a bit years. So I really appreciate you sharing some of those, yeah, some of the ways that community comes together, because it does. It really does. So you went from 7 shows, 3, 4 years ago. What does Make It look now? Because I know you've simplified it. So tell me about that. And what are some of the lessons in that?
Yeah, so we decided that we were just going to do Vancouver, just do the holiday show for a few different reasons. I grew up in Edmonton, and when we first launched Make It, Edmonton was the big show. Vancouver was a struggle because I've now lived in Vancouver, I guess, about 15, 16 years. So, yeah, around the same time we started Make It. But not being in that community, I just felt like the marketing and tapping into the energy of the city was getting harder and harder. Like Vancouver, it's somewhat easy because, I just know a lot of people here, and I feel like marketing, which is always such a fascinating topic, especially now. Like marketing, we have all these tools now and all these platforms, but I feel real authentic marketing comes down to word of mouth. So now with Vancouver holiday show, we came back for the first time in 3 years last year, and it was such a success, and it was really a great lesson for me that I don't have to push as hard as I think I do, because I'm like, oh my God, and I was hustling and doing all these things, and then I got so sick. I don't think it was COVID, but it felt awful. I was just sick for about 2 or 3 weeks right before the show, and I remember we planned this like pop-up party at Conscious Lab, and I remember I was like, yeah, you were there, right, Lisa? Did you go to that thing? Oh yeah, I was so
Yeah, yeah. I remember you being sick, and I remember us canceling personal plans because you were just not feeling good. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope she feels better for her
Oh
show.
man, it was rough. And I remember going, I'm like, I gotta go to the party because it's my company. And in hindsight, I think I just made it so much worse because I ended up being sick for an extra week. But it really was such a great lesson in like, oh, I have a team now. They can do stuff. Like I don't have to be present all the time, because throughout Make It, I really positioned myself as the face of the brand, which can be highly effective and also a bit of a double-edged sword, because then folks are always expecting you to show up. And when you get really sick, or if you decide I don't really want to do this anymore, you almost create a bit of a trap for yourself. Or at least my situation, it felt like that a little bit.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, personal brands are really successful. I just saw a post the other day that was showing like the person's Instagram following and then like their brand's Instagram following, and there's no comparison. The personal brand always has more followers, but there's also so much power in having it not be all about you, so you don't have to always be the one. As we said also right before we hit record, the who, not the how, right? And it's important to have other who's so that you're not doing all the hows and all the things.
Yeah, and I think the nature of being an entrepreneur and a creative person is you want to try different things. And I felt like if we didn't have that pause with Make It, I had a couple offers to sell the company throughout the years, but I felt like, okay, I got to do this because this is just the thing I do. And I felt like I created almost a cage for myself in a lot of ways. And yeah, it was a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation. So I feel like now, evolving just who I am and just evolving my offerings, like I have a lot more flexibility and a lot more space. And realized it's up to us to create the space for ourselves. Like, I don't think anybody else can create space for you.
Okay, I love where you're going with this. So you were in a cage and now you have space. So what's the cage that you broke out of? What it look like to break out of that cage? And what do you mean by having space now? What does that look like?
Well, I feel like you can cage yourself in a lot of different ways. But from my experience, the cage felt like expectation, a bit of reputation, just what I was known for, and success. Once you figure out, because entrepreneurship is really like building a little factory. even if you're the product, like even if you're, you're the podcaster, or you're, the one, like a speaker or writer, you're still creating somewhat of a little factory. And if you have a factory that churns out widgets in a highly effective way, it's tough to deviate, because there's that belief of like, well, what if I can't pull this off again? And then you look at the stats, and the stats are not exactly in your favor, because what is it, percentage of, female companies succeed? Just like businesses in general, I think have a 5% success rate. I think once I looked up female founded companies that earn more than $1 million a year, and I think there's like 1%.
It's a depressing number. It's absolutely a low number.
Yeah, it's very small. It's very small. So I feel like just, maybe it comes from survival or what, but like, it's like, whoa, well, how can I step away from that to the unknown? So it was super scary. So I felt like the cage definitely was the fear. And a lot of times, like, I love doing the show. I was like, oh, I really like this. This is what I know. But I knew there was something else there, and I knew that either I would sell the company completely, which is easier said than done, finding a buyer, and especially for an event company. I had two offers in the last 15 years, and it's tough, especially when you're a small company selling to a really big company. There's a lot of different factors to consider. And especially if you are somewhat the personal brand, I feel like a lot of large companies, they like that, but they want to trap you in there. They want you with the package. So then you end up getting paid to work.
You're just in their cage instead of your cage.
Yeah, exactly. And you're probably not making it as much money too. So it's sort of interesting.
So what is it like, how are things different now? Like, what did you break out of? Or I guess I get the sense of like breaking out of the trap of success, and I've always done it this way, and the pressure to do it and the expectations. Like, how did you do that? And what's the lesson in here that you wish you'd maybe known before, or that you want other entrepreneurs to hear?
What I mean, it was really forced upon me just to have that space. And then, once I had my son, I was really grateful. And we tried some stuff. We did something called Make It Box. So we created these boxes around the holidays when we didn't have our show, that still supported all the makers in our community, because we purchased items, put them in a box, and they were a huge success. And it was great, and it was a lot of work. And I think I remember writing my journal, never do Make It Boxes again. And I still get tempted. I mean, those shiny objects of like, oh, it'd be so fun to do Make It, like the Jilly box. That was what inspired me. I'd never heard of the Jilly box, and one of my friends was telling me all about it. I'm like, that's brilliant. I should do that with Make It, and we did. And it's really the fine tuning of what you can do, what you feel you should do, and really what you really want to do. So now I'm tapping into what I really want to do and what feels good. And yeah, it's a whole different experience, and it's very unpredictable. So you kind of have to deal with that sensation in your body of the not knowing and still stepping forward. But it's a good time. It's a good time.
How does being, the lesson of being instead of just doing, how does that tie into this?
Well, I've never been much of a doer. I know that might sound surprising, because I wrote a book called Make It Happen, and it looks like I'm just like churning it out. But I don't really like being that busy. I don't like being, oh yeah, that's the book. Yeah, that was hard work, man. But you know what? It was also hard work now looking back. It was a mental game. It wasn't the actual like work. Editing was not overly fun, but it's the mental thing, and like being seen, and people gonna like it. And even now, like I feel mixed feelings about the book. Like and people tell me it's good, and that's good. It was sort of a personal thing. But yeah, where was I going with this? Oh, the being versus a doing. So being is allowing yourself just to be here and not having the expectation of accomplishing something other than just being yourself, which in our society today now is quite revolutionary.
Agreed. I know you and I have really similar beliefs on this, that like the mind game is everything and it changes your world. What were some of the mind games that you had to change in the last couple of years that are like, I don't know if there's one or two that are really pivotal that have allowed you to be in this transformation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm learning them. I feel like this week I learned some really big ones. I feel having confidence in my ideas, because I'm a very visionary person. Like Conscious Lab, I came up with the name, all that 6 years ago. And I was shocked I even could get the domain and the social around it, because no one, I guess, to that point had put conscious and lab together. But for me, I just wanted to create a space where people could explore their consciousness in a very safe, very clean way, both aesthetically and energetically. And I feel like when you're a visionary type person, you actually can't really be a hard worker. They don't work the same. You're running on different bandwidth. Like when I'm visioning, like I have to be still. I need lots of space. I need to walk around. I need to like listen to my body and all that. So when I have to like work hard, when I have to grind, I'm not very good at it. I'm not very fast. I'm not very effective. I don't really like doing anything on computers if I can avoid it. But yeah, sometimes it's very lonely when you have all these ideas and you can't share them because other people either just don't get it or don't care or think you're a weirdo. So I'm so grateful, obviously, to have fellow weirdos like you, Lisa, where we can, like, in between chasing our children, be like, oh my God, I don't know this, and we could just, like, have these micro conversations that we end up, like, that's why I feel like we needed an excuse just to have a real conversation, and that's why we needed to schedule this podcast.
Seriously, I know. So yeah, our kids, Jenna's little man is 2 and Sonoma is 5, and they just have the cutest little relationship, and they're really great together. But it's also busy. Like we usually are just like, what were we talking about again? Oh yeah, this amazing thing. Oh wait, here's snacks. Here's water. Wait, don't put your clothes back on, kids. Let's go. Come on. Like it's just always something, and it's so fun. And you know, I love that you're a visionary, and I love that you always have ideas, and it makes it you're just such a cool person to be friends with. So when you just said, you're like, some people don't get it, some people think it's weird. I'm like, what? I'm like, Jenna, I hope you know, you can like always, I mean, it might be a scattered conversation, but I'm always here to hear all your ideas. And I think it's such a gift, such a genius gift.
Oh, likewise. I love all your ideas too. And I feel like even just how we're evolving it's not like it's my idea and it's my business. Like this idea of collaboration in a totally different way than I feel like it's probably ever been done, you know, at least in modern history, especially with women, like, you know, pooling our resources. It's like, well, what are your gifts? What are your gifts? Who are your connections? It's something that's quite uncharted and also very, very exciting because we're stepping into our power now, and it's quite a force.
Agreed. You know, it's just to tie this like to two things. One of the recent episodes I did was with Danielle from Band City Business Babes, and we talked about collaboration and how important that is, and like how it's helped her grow her business. And I mean, she's so well connected, and we talked about this on the episode. And I don't think you could have had that. I could have had that conversation with a male entrepreneur, like, and those conversations have not been going on for decades and decades. Like that's a fairly new conversation in terms of the business space and the podcast space. And I think the same thing with you. Like Troy and I were in the hot tub last night chatting, and one of the things he asked, we were chatting about you, and he was like, how is Jenna, like, she's so well connected, she knows all these people, and she has all the, like, she knows so much of what's going on. I'm like, it's because she's a connector and she's a collaborator, and she's one of the first people to say, how can I help you and what can I do for you? And like, you're not attached to owning certain things. Like you really are about exactly what you said there around pooling your resources. And I am sure that's such a huge reason why you're so successful. And I am really excited to have everybody else listening to this conversation too. And I think it's like perfect timing to have you and Danielle, even though it was not planned this way. Like your episodes kind of close together because collaboration is so powerful. And I think it's, you know, I didn't learn about collaborations in business school. And yet I feel like when I look at the people that are really thriving, and in many ways, not just like in one pillar or one metric of business, but really thriving, it's that community lens and that collaboration motivation.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I feel like collaboration takes a lot of trust and a lot of vulnerability. and really understanding cycles of giving and receiving, which is a different paradigm than what we really grew up with. Especially like I went to business school and you know, a bit of a business school misfit now that I think back. But yeah, I remember so much of what I learned didn't really make sense to me in my mind. I'm like, this is all just doesn't make sense. But I pretended like, okay, well, I get it. I want to be a good girl and get good grades and all of that. And so much of like when I first started Booty Belts, like Booty Belts was quite successful. I started as a school project. I was selling to 120 stores. I had like 2 little factories churning these things out. It was pretty big and it was pretty fast. But I didn't follow any of the rules I really learned in business school. Like it was all very intuitive. It was like, you know, just getting to know people, like having those chance moments and those encounters and really following that. So a lot of it is the unlearning process of our programming and our conditioning from such a young age, especially as women, and what it means to be a successful entrepreneur and also like and also now that I think about it, I really had to struggle through that identity shift of like, you know, I'm Jenna and I run 7 shows a year and, you know, I do this, you know, I have 7-figure business and all that, and to like, oh no, we're just doing one. And of course everything dropped. But I realized that financial gain is only one metric, but it feels like it's a metric that's been favored for so many years, and it's like make money at all costs. But for me, and especially now being in my 40s, like there's so many other metrics, like my health and my relationships and like my, you know, my son, like being happy and healthy and being connected to him. So anyways, where was I going with that? Yeah, we're really able to define this whole new way of being.
I'm literally taking notes right now for another podcast we're going to do. Cause I already know I want to tap into, you know, what are the success metrics that you care about? And like, well, I'm dying to ask you, but I know we're going to run out of time. So I'm going to try and keep us on this topic, but I want to know, like, so stay tuned for future episodes, friends, because we're going to talk about like, how do you know you're a visionary, and I want to know what advice you have for other people who are visionary, because the world really talks about like the doers. So anyways, we're going to come back to that, how you use intuition in business and all that stuff. So anyways, I'm putting a pin in it. I'm coming back to it. If my team is listening, please start me my next interview with Jenna, and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, a regular old series.
Oh yeah, yes. Entrepreneur Hour and Feminine Leadership with Jenna.
Oh, it's a huge topic now, and I feel like it's a huge topic for all gender identification. Like it's not, you know, the feminine leadership doesn't mean it's a woman. You know, and I listened to your other podcast about femininity, which was really, really interesting, because. And I feel like it could be called a bunch of things like yin yang. We've got lots of terminology for this, but it's that softer, it's that allowing, it's that feeling of like opening and really asking instead of pushing. And that is really the hard work. And you know, that's the beingness. You know, that's doing a different type of work other than answering a million emails on your computer. Just being able to like receive and ask for what you want. Like if you can just focus on those 2 skills, you don't even need email anymore or social media.
Oh my gosh, we are so going to talk about that. I can't wait to hear all the things, because I've got like a list of 20 people I need to reply to an email, and I need to know how to not do that. So we're going to talk about that next time for sure. Okay, let's kind of switch gears here, but I think so perfectly aligned with what we were just talking about, like the opening, the softness. The last couple years, not only did your entire business pivot and shift, but as you mentioned, you also became a mom. Mm-hmm. So what was that experience like? What do you wish you had known before becoming a mom and an entrepreneur?
What did I wish I knew? I don't know if there could have been anything, and if I knew all the things, I might have made a different decision.
Oh my gosh, real talk though? Yeah, it's so hard, right? It's so hard.
I'm totally joking, because I'm so, but I feel like what I mean by saying that, not that I regret having my son, because he's definitely the best thing I've ever done. Just the old me would have been like, well, why the hell would I would want to do that? Because you don't understand the feeling and the capacity that your heart can evolve, and just like the lessons, like, because it doesn't. And I remember even looking around with my friends with kids, I'm like, oh, that really is gross, and that really is all like kind of dirty, and like, but yeah, no, I really feel like my son's been my greatest teacher. I know a lot of parents say that, but it is true. And yeah, what advice would be good? Probably that it's gonna look messy and crazy, and you just sort of figure it out. And slowing down really helps a lot.
Can you imagine doing 7 shows and being a mother right now?
No. Well, I would just do it way differently. I would have probably a lot more support. That's also a great topic, because you can't imagine something higher, just like on a vibrational standpoint. Like I can't imagine, like, because we're both reading that book, 10x is easier than 2x. But the 10x is a great leap of faith, because like when I think, wow, 10x my condo, 10x my body, 10x my relationship, it's a hard thing to wrap your head around, because I'm in the current reality. So I feel like it takes a lot of imagination and curiosity.
So cool. I'll link to the book in the show notes. And I think, what you said there is like, I would need a lot more support. And that's what it is. Like it's that. And I think that's why, I'm sure that's a big part of the reason why entrepreneurship and motherhood, like it's probably that combination of motherhood feels so stifling, is because we haven't really been taught how to get the help and how to get the support and how to ask and receive, as you were mentioning too. And so I think you're right. It does take like a complete shift in paradigms and beliefs and everything to be able to make those really big things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I look at you, and I know lots of other people do, and they're like, wow, she is an author. She has a gorgeous event space downtown. You're an entrepreneur. You're a mom. Like you're so joyful and friendly and happy and fun and genuine and just good people. And I'm like, she must like know that she's never failed. She must never get scared. She must always just feel like,
Really, Lisa? Come on.
really, yeah, no, seriously, like tell me, like I'm like, is everything like easy and amazing? Oh, I don't know. You see me rant and get on my soapboxes. No, I don't think I'm like that.
Well,
I definitely have lots of failures and lots of struggles.
of course, everybody has a lot of failures and a lot of struggles. Okay, so how are you like? Are you asking how I do it, or what sort of? Like, of course, I
What's
do
your,
things all the time. Like, I feel like so many things I do aren't. It's all perception, though, right? It's the lens that we choose to look at from. Like, I have good days, I have bad days. I have days where I feel like I should be so much further. There's days where I want to give it all up and just stay at home with my son. There's days where, yeah, I want to open up 100 conscious labs. And well, I always love Conscious Lab. I've never wanted to give up. I want to sign like a lifetime lease, because I love that space so much. But that's also more in my purpose. Like with Make It, I felt like I got a lot of experience. I learned a lot. But as I evolved as a person, I wasn't getting the juice that I once did. And that it's like a relationship, it's like a marriage. Like you go through ups and downs, and at a certain point, you might come to the conclusion that maybe this isn't the right partnership for you. Like that's how I felt with Make It. But instead of selling it, I'm like, but I do like the Vancouver Holiday Show. That's really fun for me, and that I can do. And it's like any sort of living thing. It's like trees. You have to prune them to allow the rest of the tree to be more viable. So I feel like that's a lot of what business is. It's fine tuning. So I would say my biggest struggle is, well, I don't really know what to do every day. Like every day is a new adventure, and that can feel very overwhelming, and the overwhelm can lead to fear and paralysis and all that good juicy fun feelings that we get as humans. And also I'm in the consciousness space. Like it's relatively new, and even the conversations that are having, and like cold plunge and microdosing and breath work, a lot of this stuff is becoming more talked about, and it's becoming big, and it's like the business behind spirituality. Like that can get a little bit messy. And yeah, I feel just being a woman today is hard work because there's so much pressure to do all the things, and there's so many distractions.
So how do you prune, you talked about pruning the business and pruning the tree. How do you prune your life to figure out of all the different things you could do, out of all the different pressures, expectations, the different identities, the different things even that are genuinely important to you, how do you prune it? And how do you figure out what are the essential pieces of Jenna and of your life?
I just stop doing what I don't want to do anymore, and I take a step back every so often. Like, do I like doing this? And I listen to my body, and I have a natural hosting gene, which is a good thing and sometimes a negative thing, because a lot of times, I'll just give an example so it's relatable. A lot of times at Conscious Lab in the past, like someone was having their event and I would get there early, be there to greet them. I'd make the tea, I'd make sure they had everything, and I was like very motherly. And at first that really served me. It really, like, I have very good reviews now on Pure Space because I've gone above and beyond so many times. And now, like, there was an event last night and it looked cool. I would have loved to have gone to it, but my partner Orson was out of town. So it's like I can communicate to the guy renting the space what to do. And I even one step further, I can hire someone to do that. Like, I don't have to use all my energy because it's not serving the highest good. What would serve the highest good is if I did open 100 conscious labs across the world and help people step into their higher self. Like, that would be the big picture, but that's the 10x, right? And that's why the book talks about 2x is harder. Like, 2x would be like, I'm going to be twice as good a hostess and like really, but at the end of the day, like, these expectations of what a good hostess is, it's just my own internal dialogue. The person from the outside has no idea. They're just like renting a space. It's very transactional. So a lot of the work is really listening to the inner storyteller, and we can listen to the positive higher self storyteller, or we can listen to the lower self storyteller. And the stories are so different. So what we tune into is what creates our perspective and ultimately our reality.
How do you do that?
Tune into the higher one.
How do you know, like, which one is your higher and which one is your lower? How do you know because you even said it, like some days are hard. How do you know if that voice saying you should just quit it all is the higher or the lower? Because someday, like, it's part, as we even said, doubt is part of the creative process. So how do you know if it's part of the creative process in service of the higher vision, in service of your best self, or if it's the voice telling you this isn't your path, this isn't for you?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Discernment. It's all about the discernment. And I feel like the truth, like there's the higher truth, and I feel the higher truth is connected to our internal truth as well. Like, we know when we're pretending. We know.
How do you know? Like, what are some of your, like, maybe green flags or red flags? Like, what are some of the things? How does Jenna know?
I entered into a partnership last year with a really big company, and I did not necessarily want to do it, but I thought it was the right thing. I thought I would make some money. I thought it would just be good. But I knew, and I think when you don't have to try and convince yourself. And I think Danielle Laporte calls it like hell no, or hell yes, or hell no, or whatever you want to call it. It's like a very strong, it's instinctual. You move towards, and it's, Susie Batiste, the founder of Poopery, someone I really look to for inspiration. She talks about resonance and dissonance. You know when you're resonating because you don't have to convince yourself you're resonating. You are resonating. You feel it. It's like when you hear a really good song you like, you don't have to question, do I like this song? Does this song make me happy? It's all the same thing. You just can apply the same sort of internal technology to all different aspects. As soon as it's like, oh, should I go to this thing? Well, this person will probably be there. I should probably get to talk to them, or, this person. And we all do it. You can't fault yourself. It's just part of the journey. It's part of the creative process. I feel like you'd be inhuman if you didn't have this internal dialogue to some degree. But the discernment and the tuning gets easier and easier or you fine tune it the higher you go. And it's like any craft. It's like a painter or a violinist. Like you just get better and better as you do it. But that's why I love talking about consciousness, because consciousness is that awareness of what's happening, and it's that separation between your thoughts. It's just that autopilot. And let's face it, a lot of people just have that autopilot all the time. And social media is not helping the whole problem. And I was talking about this just the other day. I feel like it's what cigarettes were probably 50 years ago, where, doctors smoked on airplanes. No one thought anything of it. It was just normal. And I feel like right now, that's what it is with social media and our addictions to our phones. We're in it, but enough people are starting to wake up to the long-term impact and the long-term harm of some of these habits that we've started to cultivate as our society has gone faster and faster. And I don't think a really fast society, like, sure, we can build a lot of things. I don't know if that's a healthy way to go long term. It's just not sustainable. And that's why, people want to grow vegetables now and do these more practical skills that actually slow us down and get us present, because consciousness requires presence. You can't be conscious in the past. Like, you could be conscious you're thinking of the past, but when you go deep into those stories, like, you're just allowing that thought process to take over.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything that you said there, from the resonance and the dissonance. And I just love what you said there about, if you have to convince yourself, it's not resonant, And I also just love I totally agree about social media. And like, I don't have the answers. I haven't gotten it figured out, but I 1,000% agree with you that we're going in the wrong direction with it. And, yeah, I feel like if we could, and I think consciousness, you're right, is one of the answers. Like, I feel like at least I'm in the place, and I know many of us are, and society is in this place where we're recognized, like there is a huge number of us that are recognizing it's probably not great for us. And that is, I think, the first step towards actually improving it and fixing it, and growing vegetables and all the things, all those pieces, being present. Okay. Question for you. I know you're someone who, you are very visionary, and I hear you. I mean, the idea to create 100 conscious labs around the world, I love it. Like, it makes me excited. And I know you've already achieved a lot of things. So in what way do you think that achieving your goals actually makes your life harder? How has, in your life, being successful actually been a challenge, made things harder?
Well, to answer that question, you have to look at the whole situation from a negative viewpoint, right? Because
Potentially.
yeah, because it's saying, I feel like my lower self would have that perspective of like, how has it made my life harder? Like, it's made everything easier.
Oh, okay. Let me
You-
share with you something that you've made me reframe, and I think we're going to talk about it on the next episode. The idea that, and I think we're both big believers in this, that like the hard things it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I think that there's this you know what I mean? Like, there's a conception that if something's been made harder, that it's automatically negative, but I don't think that's necessarily it. And I think we're going to talk about that more in the next episode. So, if we remove the concept that, or the assumption that something being harder or more challenging is automatically a bad thing.
Yes, I see what I see what you're saying, because it's really like riding this wave. And I know a lot of successful people, like from like billionaire level, and so it's so fascinating. I'm always grateful when I can have conversations with people who maybe on the outside you're like, whoa, they're so successful. But do you know, can you swear on this podcast?
Go for it. If you got children, turn this off and hit pause, come back.
Like the clusterfuck some of these people like have had to go through, and like just like sometimes like the shitstorm that their life is in, it is not for the faint of heart. So the more successful, whatever, the more energy comes into your life. It's like this. But for most of us, we want a life like this. And so what you need to get better at is really, I think, breath work, and this is why it's such a huge well, I guess a trend or whatever you want to call it now, because simply breathing and slowing down and using some of these physical modalities is really, I feel, the only way through. Or I guess you could drink a lot and take a lot of drugs. That's another coping mechanism. But again, high or lower, right? So the bigger you get or the higher you go, because I believe everything's a spiral staircase up or spiral staircase down. So say you're climbing the spiral staircase, the higher you get, like it's like this. And yeah, you got to buckle up, and you got to have friends who are also riding that wave and a community around you, because if you're the one up here and all your friends are down here, like it just will not be compatible. You'll either fall to their level again, or I mean, Tony Robbins always talks about the 5 people that surround you. It's legit though. That's super, super important.
For those that couldn't see Jenna's hands, she's making like big waves, like up high and down low, versus like little waves. And I think this is a really interesting concept because it's true. Like in some ways, like the higher up you go, you also have the higher lows, and you have to have the capacity for those bigger waves. I don't know if I'm hopefully explaining that. Like you need to have the capacity for the bigger waves. And as an example, one of the things that I think about, and we've talked about this, like when you have certain success, it can actually take away the excuse. You can't say I don't have time or I don't have money, because you have it, right? And in some ways that can actually make things harder, right? Like there's that down wave. Like you have to actually take accountability and personal responsibility, and you just have different challenges coming at you. And so, I guess I wanted to bring that up because I think there's just so many interesting topics in there. And I know you know a lot of successful people, so you get this. Because a lot of people just think like, and I literally just met up with an amazing entrepreneur the other day who is like, has achieved her goals that we worked on a few years ago, one of my previous client of mine. And she's still just like, I have all the things and it ain't it. Like, she's still struggling in a lot of ways. And I think we just need to like, I guess I want to bring awareness to that. I think it's important to speak life into that, as opposed to just being like, oh yes, if you just achieve all your goals, if you have these levels of success, everything in your life is going to be fine. We have to recognize the truth of it, that that's not enough, and that we actually need to build the resiliency, the capacity, and many things that I probably don't even know about yet, because I'm still on that journey too. As we call in more success and more achievement, there's also the bigger challenges and the bigger responsibilities, and we have to figure out how to navigate those waves. And I agree, having great people around you and having breath work as a tool in the toolbox, 2 really, really important ways to navigate and ride those waves.
Yeah, I like what you said about increasing your capacity, your bandwidth, and these are all
Your surfing skills, whatever you want to call
whatever
it.
you want to call it. You just have to, it's like building any muscle. I mean, a lot of this stuff isn't revolutionary. It's not like, whoa, that's a secret answer I've never heard of. Like, it's just like building muscles on your body, there's a training involved. And that's why usually, people who win the lottery, they end up in the same position they are a year later, because they haven't built those muscles. They haven't built that capacity to receive more. And I've definitely had, like when my book came out, it was because it was also the 10-year anniversary of Make It. It was exciting. I did a press tour. I got to go to Toronto and do lots of cool stuff. And I really felt like it took a lot out of me, and it wasn't just like this happy time. It was like it was tough, like, because I felt that stretching, because sometimes that stretching happens like really, really fast, and it can be quite painful, just like growing pains. Like it's all like the inside stuff and the outside stuff, like there's so many parallels, right? Like it's all kind of the same, which makes it so fascinating.
Agreed. And I think, you're right. None of this is revolutionary. Like people but also we don't always talk about this. And social media, I think especially makes it looks like everybody's life is so perfect. And it's just like accomplishing these few things or ticking these boxes, and then everything's okay. And not everybody has, Jenna's in their life like I do. And not everybody has the people that you have in your life to really see behind the shit show and see the reality of it. So that's why I just, I'm really so grateful for your openness, and because one of the missions of this podcast is to like literally put a mic to these conversations that are kind of happening in these places, but aren't really in And I'm here with like the women of consciousness herself. Like they're not in the collective consciousness as much and the mic as much as they should be. Okay, let's talk about motherhood before we wrap this up a little bit more. Because my personal opinion, and you alluded to it, and so I think you might agree with me on this, but I do think that motherhood and entrepreneurship are like the best personal growth experiences you can ever ask for. Like both of them have stretched me in so many ways and continue to. What do you think are the parts of motherhood and entrepreneurship that are easier when they come together? And what do you think is harder when you have both of them together?
It's almost like riding two roller coasters at the same time.
Oh, yes, yes. Or like surfing two waves. I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, because they both really have the highest velocity of emotion and just feelings and
Whiplash.
and you're just getting thrashed around. And so when they're scary, they're really freaking scary. And when they're amazing, they're so amazing. And one can be really good and one can be really, really hard. And they also take up all of your focus. And where my son Arlo told me yesterday morning that he didn't want to go to daycare. He wanted to stay home with mom. And I think he was not feeling 100%. So I'm like, okay, you can stay home with mom. And of course I had all these like calls and things I was planning to do with my day. And a few of them I was able to do because I just put on a movie and he was happy to watch his movie. But then it's like you feel guilty and like, oh, I'm being a bad mom because my kid's watching all this TV today. But I'm really like so excited to be on this Zoom call. Like I genuinely was doing calls and stuff I really wanted to be on. So that can be tough. And then we went to the playground and I was having a Zoom call. Oh, this is kind of funny. I was literally by a Science World, that big tower. There's this like big tower and a big metal slide. And so I was on a Zoom call with my video off, of course, and I'm climbing, because Arlo wants mom to come up. I was climbing this tower, going down this like mega slide while having a Zoom call, and it all felt so funny to me. And I told the people I was chatting with, and they have kids, so they kind of thought it was hilarious too. But it made me realize, like, wow, that's like extreme. But you just have to laugh at it and realize, like, when you're an entrepreneur, this is the toughest pill to swallow. We really have full control of what we're spending our time on.
How do you take full control of the time you're spending on? Like what strategies, tips, or perspectives do you have that do you think allow you to really claim that and take ownership?
Oh, I'm still learning this all the time. I feel like it's that delicate balance of, we all want to be in service and help everybody out and get our brains picked and all that. And you can either go through the day allowing your energy to be tapped in or tapping into other people's energy. And it's or tapping into your own. So I think it's just structuring your day. Like, do you want to take that phone call? Is that a meeting that's life-giving? Does it matter to you? And just being really honest with yourself. And yeah, some people might think you're a jerk because you don't want to, maybe have a meeting with them for an hour. And that's okay. I feel that as women, the more we get comfortable with possibly being perceived as a jerk, and probably you won't be. They'll just be like, oh, she's really busy because she's doing all this cool stuff. Just getting really selfish with your time, because if you're going to be selfish about anything, it should probably be your time.
Yes, such important words.
Yeah.
Totally,
It's such a
totally.
precious resource. Like, money is a precious resource, of course, in certain ways, but we also know now that you don't have to trade your time for money. There's other ways, but really, like, connection is such a valuable resource too. and we get to choose who we connect to, and we know that's why we wanted to record this podcast, because like you and I have such a beautiful connection. Whenever I hang out with you, I feel like I feel like abundant, and I feel happy, and you know, you give so much to me, and it's that cycle of giving, receiving. And that's why these, you know, these friendships, I think, as you get more conscious, like become deeper so much faster. Because I really haven't known you for very long, Lisa, but it feels like we have that soul sister, like, you know, I trust you and I tell you everything, and like it's amazing how fast that can happen when you just get really clear on who you want to be.
Oh, I really deeply appreciate all those kind words, and I feel exactly the same way. It was funny, like I'm like, oh, was coming up. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know what Jenna's parents did for work. Like, there's so many things about you, like surfacey sort of things that like I don't know, but like I know you, and I also deeply trust you, and will like tell you anything, and would do anything for you. And like I'm so grateful for our friendship, and I know that everybody listening, like you got a little glimpse into how amazing Jenna is, and how lucky I am to have her in my life. And you guys are all getting a little glimpse of it on this show. Okay, I'm gonna go into the rapid fire questions here. As much as like I don't want to, I feel like I need to, because we have a very important pre-event dinner date to get to, Jenna, and we're gonna make that happen. Okay, okay, rapid fire question. In this season of life, what keeps you up at night?
Like in a good way or a bad way?
Ooh, tell me both.
Well, I get really excited about things. So sometimes my brain wakes up. Well, I wake up because I've got a 2-year-old. So sometimes and now he's sleeping in our bed, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, sometimes I just get these downloads of ideas, and it literally feels like my brain is being downloaded from something else, and it's just like, grrr. So that can be pretty intense. So that definitely keeps me up at night. Like negative things, I don't know. The world's just like crazy right now. It's just like, a lot of stuff doesn't make sense, and sometimes what keeps me up at night is confusion of my feelings.
Yep, I get that. Okay, selfish question. What entrepreneurship advice do you think I should take?
Oh, wow. That you should take. That's a tough one. Like, Lisa, you're doing such amazing stuff. Like, I feel... but you're doing maybe a lot of different things. Like maybe just, I don't know, focus in on the one thing you like the most or love the most that really fuels you up. Because that's what I felt with Make It and Conscious Lab. Like, I know this rapid fire, this is long-winded, but Make It took a lot of focus, but I loved Conscious Lab, so it was very hard. Like, Conscious Lab was just my hobby in the back that sometimes I got to play with. But now that I get to play with it all the time, it's so fun. It doesn't feel like work. Literally, we get to go to a cool party tonight with this incredible woman, get to dance, and I freaking get paid. Like, how is that? Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'm so excited to build that. And I see the level above that, and the level above that, a level above that. Yeah, just do stuff for selfish reasons.
Oh, such good advice for anybody, not just for me, for all of us. Okay, what's a goal you're working on right now?
To have more time just to just do whatever I want, like free time, more free time.
One of the things I really love to do on this podcast too is to normalize changing your mind. And well, I feel like, okay, here's mini soapbox for a second, rapid fire. But I feel like people get attached to like an identity and a belief, and the belief in the identity, and then they can't like pull it apart. I think it's one of the problems in our society, and especially with polarization and things like that. I think it's people becoming overly attached to an identity, and therefore the belief that's supposed to come along with that identity. So I want to normalize us that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to learn something new. And in fact, if have been presented with new information and you haven't changed your mind at all, you haven't like thought about anything any differently, you're actually not that smart. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just did. So anyways, I want to normalize that it's okay to change your mind. So what's something in motherhood that you've changed your mind about?
Oh,
Maybe something you thought you would never do, something, yeah, whatever you think.
right now I have my son in daycare almost full time. We started out with 2 days, and we did 3, and then we did 4 now, because I'm doing some work right now that feels really important, and it feels like such a calling. So yeah, I've got, and I do definitely have the mom guilt. That's why I let him stay home yesterday, because I missed him. And who knows, I might regret it later on. and I'm just doing the best I can right now. So.
So good. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Okay, what does your morning routine look like these days?
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, we're letting Arlo sleep with us because my partner Orson was traveling a lot, and I just love connecting him because he's so sweet. And now he's kind of stuck in our bed because, and I think Orson likes it too. Yeah, so it kind of depends when Arlo's going to wake up. Sometimes I wake up before him. Sometimes I wake up at the same time. And it's kind of like that mad dash for getting him off to daycare. I try and make a smoothie because I really like smoothies. Yeah, I don't really do a lot of meditative. Like sometimes when I'm cuddling him, I'm like, just meditate, just meditate. I don't know, try and stuff some food in my mouth.
I love the realness. I think it's important to like normalize all the different things.
Every day.
Oh, then you are winning, girl. You are winning.
And now that I have my fake lashes, I just got to wash my face, like put on some lotion, and I can just like be presentable to the outside world. Yeah, it looks, yeah. Before I had my son, I could like just have like an hour-long thing, and it was glorious. But
yeah, motherhood's different. It changes things, absolutely. Okay, have you had an I've made it moment? And if yes, what was it?
yeah, I've had lots. I actually think that's super important to celebrate and to acknowledge how far you've come. It's something that I just love celebrating, usually because there's like food involved. Like we should celebrate this podcast because we've been talking.
We are going
We're
to.
gonna celebrate. And yeah, I love that feeling of celebration. And I really believe like you should celebrate. Like we just signed a lease for Conscious Lab was it this week, last week? This Monday. Yeah. So we like Orson and I went out to the place that we first met, our first date spot, and just had a lovely lunch and celebrated like this new chapter. Yeah, like when my book came out, I got to be on the cover of the Georgia Straight, so that was pretty cool. I was out of town because I was doing my press tour in Toronto, I think. And no, I was in Calgary for Make It. And so I had like all my friends on Instagram stories, like holding up the cover. So that felt really cool. And every time we end Make It, like we really created like ritual within the show. So we do like a big family photo, and then we all like cheer, and it's like this like really elated. Like I'm so exhausted, I feel like I'm gonna like fall over, and I'm so like hyped up. So it's just a really beautiful moment. Always go for a really nice dinner after that. Yeah, I feel like it's celebrating yourself is. Oh, and I like to buy jewelry for myself after big accomplishments. Yeah, because why not? It's fun. You get to see it after, and be got quite a ring collection now because I'm like,
Ah, I'll never look at your rings the same. I'll be like, oh, what was this for? What was this for? What was this for?
yeah.
So cool. Oh, I love that. Okay. Anybody who listens to this episode, like there's so many little treasures that you've dropped in here, from entrepreneurship tips to consciousness and spirituality to mindset to motherhood and just cool human vibes. Like you are just all of the things. So for those that are like, I need more Jenna in my life, where can people find you, follow you, and get in your world?
Get into my world. Well, if you are a creative entrepreneur, a crafter, maker, definitely apply for Make It Vancouver. We're close to sold out, but if you go to makeitshow.ca, we've decided this year we're just turning off Instagram when we're not actively doing the show. So there's probably a bunch of DMs because we have like 30,000 followers, and I literally haven't checked it, or no one's checked it in months. But anyways, that's another story. But yeah, artist, maker, apply for Make It. And for Conscious Lab, there's so many great events happening all the time. So just check out Instagram. Like I said, I got the name Conscious Lab, or consciouslab.ca as well. And yeah, I love collaborating. It's so fun when you can meet other like-minded people and put something awesome together. So let me know.
Love it. Okay, so go check out Jenna and Conscious Lab, Make It show. Make sure that if you are interested in collaborating, that you reach out to her. And if you just like cool things like me, then go to all of them because they're all incredible. Jenna, thank you so much for this. Oh, speaking of cool things, we have got to get going to Tara Tang's book launch party. So I'll let you go on that. I'll also drop in the show notes the link to Tara's book because it's going to be beautiful. Your Body's a Revolution. It's going to be magic. Jenna, Thank you. This is such a pleasure. We have lots more to talk about, so I know you're going to be back. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life as a friend, as a fellow mama, as a neighbor, which is amazing.
No, right over
And
there, right?
I know. We can like almost see each other from where we're recording. It's very cool. But just thank you for being you. Thank you for being the visionary you are, and just know that your impact spreads so far, and I know you're not done yet.
Well, thank you, Lisa. You are an incredible human. Such a pleasure to be your friend, and I always love all the time we get to spend together. It's really, really precious.